So first and foremost, welcome everyone. Today is Constitution Day, September 17th. And this year for Constitution Day, we have a very special guest, Ron Turner, who will be talking about the voting process they have in place for Sarasota County, as well as the vote by mail process. I know people may have questions about that. And then talking about the poll worker program within this presentation. But before we delve into it, I would first like everyone, not everyone, but all the campus representatives to do introductions so students can have a face as to who is doing voter engagement on their campus. And so I'll start. So my name is Jada McNeil. I work in the Student Activities and Campus Engagement Office at New College of Florida, and I do a lot of voter engagement events for New College, and as well as I supervise 2 Campus Vote Project fellows that do peer-to-peer voter engagement at New College of Florida. So hi, welcome. And next up, Ringling.
Hello, everyone. I am Rachel Levy-Baker, and I'm the Director of Student Volunteerism and Service Learning at Ringling College of Art and Design, and I oversee civic engagement programming on campus. We have 2 campus election engagement fellows that are students that are working with us this year and working on voter registration, voter education, helping with voting by mail, all of that fun stuff. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you, New College, for helping orchestrate this. And thank you to Supervisor Turner and Rachel Denton from the Sarasota Supervisor of Elections Office. We are always so grateful for the work you do and the outreach you do to make sure that everybody is vote ready. So for all you Ringling students, if you've got any questions beyond the presentation today, please reach out to us at vote@ringling.edu. So thank you. And next, Katie from USFSM.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie. I am the Coordinator of Student Organizations and Leadership over in the Office of Student Engagement for the Sarasota Manatee campus. I work with leadership programming, student organizations. I am a student government advisor. I also do civic engagement programming and volunteerism. And we have one student worker, Melissa, our engagement consultant, who helps me with all of that. Who is left to go?
Do we have any campus representatives from State College of Florida? Hi, yes, we can. Yes, thank you so much. All right, up next, a representative from Everglades.
Hi, happy Constitution Week. My name is Carrie Conboy. I'm the Director of Student Services at Everglades University. We've been celebrating Constitution Week here at the campus, getting our students excited about voting and the election coming up. I'm responsible for the activities, the graduation, anything to do with student services. So thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. And then Kaiser, a representative from Kaiser.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Barrow, Director of Student Services at Kaiser University, and we are doing everything we can to get our students voter ready for this election and everything that's coming down the pipeline. So we're thankful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I believe that was all the schools. Am I missing a school before we move on? All right, awesome. All right, so before we get into the presentation, just have some community guidelines. So one, please mute your microphone. As we all know with Zoom, with background noise, it can be a distraction to the presentation. So just as a reminder to mute your microphone. In this presentation, we'll have 3 ways you can ask questions, which will be asked after the presentation. So the first one is just posting a question in the chat. Myself, along with Katie and Rachel Levy-Baker, we will be monitoring the chat for questions and then consolidating questions within a doc if questions have similar themes. If you want to ask a question but want to remain anonymous, you can privately message myself, Rachel Levy-Baker, or Katie with those questions. And then that last option is if you want to directly ask a question to yourself, please utilize the raise hand feature. We'll be looking through the audience for people who want to directly ask their question using the raise hand feature, which can be found by clicking participants on the bottom of the screen. And so I just want to have everybody to know how you can ask questions within this presentation. Again, questions will be asked after the presentation because a lot of times some questions may be answered within the presentation. So we will reserve all questions afterwards, including questions that are privately messaged to us, as well as questions that are posted in the chat. Now, if it's like a very simple question, like when's the last day to register, we will probably put like a quick response in the chat. But for any other answers that you would like Ron Turner to address, we will ask afterwards. Another thing is just being respectful. We won't tolerate any appropriateness here. So let's just all respect one another within this presentation. And then finally, within our time frame, we may not have time to answer all questions depending on how many questions we receive. So we will have a follow-up and we'll have contact information for everybody representing their different campuses on how we can follow up with those questions that weren't answered during this presentation. And then last but not least, afterwards, I hope everyone, if you're not already, register to vote because the last day to register to vote is October 5th. Yes. So now I will stop sharing the screen and I will give it up for Ron Turner, who will introduce himself for this presentation. So everyone welcome Ron Turner.
Well, hello, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be here with you. I am the Supervisor of Elections for Sarasota County, which is an elected position in itself. In Florida's state constitution, have 5 constitutional officers at the county level: the sheriff, the clerk of the circuit court, and tax collector, property appraiser, and supervisor of elections is a 5th county officer elected. And my job is to register voters in the county and to conduct elections, among other things, but those are the primary functions. So it's great to be with you today for the various college representatives and students. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. This is a very important year. Obviously, I would have liked to talk to you in person, but that's, as we all know, not as easy any longer, and we're certainly all getting used to Zoom because I just left one Zoom meeting to come over to this one, and I'll have another one and after this one. So it's become a way of life for all of us. So today is Constitution Day. So the U.S. Constitution was signed September 17, 1787. And one of the important concepts in the Constitution that applies to elections that I think are very important is the concept of federalism. And if you don't know what federalism means, the Constitution doesn't specifically mention the term federalism, but what the U.S. Constitution does is break down the functions between the federal government and the state government. We know that the federal government has certain functions like to declare war, to maintain the armed forces, and things that are part of the federal government's purview and responsibility. The states, however, have their own functions. States run the schools in the United States, the public school system, but the states also run elections. So I just want to mention that because oftentimes we hear a lot of national conversation or conversation at the federal level about elections, and primarily elections are run by the states. And that includes even national elections because there is no national system of elections in the United States. It's not centralized. It is run by the various states and localities, local jurisdictions, like here in Sarasota County. So for the presidential general election that is coming up, there are literally 6,000 or 7,000 local jurisdictions in the United States that run elections. So I mention that because A, I think it's appropriate on Constitution Day, and B, I think it's just a little background when you hear some of the conversation at the national level about elections, that remember, here in Florida, in Sarasota County, it is the state's responsibility and primarily the Supervisor of Elections responsibility in each county to conduct the elections. So this has been a very an interesting year in 2020 for all of us. When you combine the words Florida and elections in the same sentence, it never is dull. I think, as many of us know from past history here. And we went into 2020 thinking that, hey, we were going to have a big presidential election year, and all we had to worry about was election security and the Russians. And then came March 1st when Governor DeSantis announced the first cases of COVID in the state of Florida, which were in Hillsborough and Manatee County. But as I think many, if not all of us on this Zoom, in the Zoom presentation know, that the Manatee County case was actually here in Sarasota County being treated at Doctors Hospital. So COVID has definitely been a part of our, part of our county's kind of mindset, or in our mind since day one here. And I mentioned that because that happened March the 1st when it was announced, and we had a presidential preference primary in Florida on March 17th. So elections don't begin on election day, although election day was the 17th. Elections begin months ahead of time. So we were already deep into that election when COVID came on the scene and started impacting things like our poll workers, the men and women who you see if you go vote in person, that assist voters and issue ballots and make sure that the voters get their ballots into the tabulators and ballot boxes and those sorts of things on election day. So it really impacted us in March in many ways. But we made it through the March election with the help of the community and voters. We had an election in August. August 18th was a statewide primary for every other office that had a primary election besides President of the United States. And by that time, we had implemented the CDC guidelines for voting during this time of COVID, with our workers wearing face coverings, social distancing, voting booths and check-in stations, having kind of the blue tape or markers on the floor like you see at many retail locations and other locations to help guide people to spread out and for social distancing concerns. And that was in August. And then here we are, we're headed toward the November 3rd election, the general election, as I like to call the Super Bowl of elections. If you're an elections geek like me, or elections administrator, and you work in this business, you conduct a variety of different elections, but really the biggest election of them all is a presidential election, general election that happens every 4 years, and there's nothing quite like it for the United States and our citizens and voters, and certainly nothing quite like it for elections administrators. It is an exciting time. So in Florida, you have to register to vote to be able to vote during an election. And there is a deadline to register to vote in Florida, which is 29 days prior to any election in the state of Florida. The voter registration deadline for the general election for someone who is not registered to vote already, that deadline is October 5th. And you're able to register to vote. An individual is able to register to vote if they are 18 years of age or older, a U.S. citizen, a resident of the state of Florida, and they can do that by registering online at registertovoteflorida.gov, G-O-V, or there are paper applications available through our website at SarasotaVotes, VOTES.com. But a great way to register to vote right now is through the online voter registration portal that is statewide, and again, it is registered to vote florida.gov. So if you're not registered to vote, I would encourage you to go register to vote prior to the October 5th deadline for the general election. If you are eligible to register to vote, I would encourage you to do that. Once you're registered to vote, as long as you're voting in elections fairly routinely, and we know where you're located, because if your address changes, you always need to update your address with your local elections office, or say if your signature changes, or if your name changes for some reason, marriage or whatever, you need to update those kind of information with the elections office. But in Florida, once you're registered, then you're registered from then on. I registered a few days after my 18th birthday. I've been a registered voter ever since. Have not had to register again, although I have changed other things in my record as an address when I've moved or something like that. So for an election, there are 3 ways to vote in Florida. You can vote by mail, which is just another term for absentee voting or absentee ballots. In 2002, Florida created no excuse absentee voting statewide. That was a state law that was passed, and so that system was created in 2002. It was 18 years ago. And then in 2016, the Florida legislature changed the name of absentee to vote by mail. And really, that's the only thing that's changed in Florida with that process, primarily, by and large. Any voter can vote by mail. You just have to make a request for that vote by mail ballot. And you can make a request for one individual election, one single election, or you can make a request to get a ballot mailed to you through 2 general election cycles. So that would take a voter now, if they wanted to make that request through 2 general election cycles, it would take a voter through the end of 2022, and we would just automatically mail a ballot to a voter for any election they're eligible to vote in. We have a lot of people voting by mail this cycle. We were going to have a lot of vote by mail ballots anyhow. We were anticipating for this general election coming up that we would have, before COVID came on the scene, we were anticipating that we would have probably 100,000 vote by mail ballots. Now, we have 332,000 registered voters in Sarasota County. So to give you some type of framework for that concept of size-wise, what we're talking about. So 332,000 registered voters. We were anticipating 100,000 vote by mail before COVID came on the scene. Well, right now, for this general election, we already have 142,000 vote by mail requests with our initial mailings that are going out. The first ballots go out to military and overseas voters. Those are going out tomorrow. Those go out 45 days before the election. And then the first domestic ballots that go out to everyone else will go out on September 24th, which is the earliest date that we're allowed to mail vote by mail ballots to anyone who isn't overseas or isn't in the military. So 142,000 vote by mail requests. So it's significantly more, almost 50% more than we were anticipating for this election. So my estimation at this point is more than half of voters will vote by mail in the general election, which will be a first in Sarasota County, across Florida, and across the United States. So a lot of people are voting by mail. Then the other option for in-person voting is early voting. You can vote early. We will have early voting in Sarasota County beginning October 19th and continuing through November 1st. That's 14 days of early voting, 8:30 to 6:30 each day. So that's 10 hours a day for 14 days. And we have 8 locations in the county where you can vote early. The nice thing about early voting is you get to choose the location where you go vote early. It just depends on where you're at in Sarasota County. So we have sites in North Sarasota County at North Sarasota Library off of MLK Boulevard, in downtown Sarasota, where I'm sitting right now at the Terrace Building, which is at the corner of Ringling and 301. Fruitville Library, Bee Ridge Park, Sarasota Square Mall. We actually build an early voting site in the middle of the mall, so we're not even in a storefront. We're squeezed in between Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the car dealership there in the center court of the mall. But that's one of our busiest sites for voting in the entire county. That's a great site. We're also at in Venice at the R.L. Anderson building. And then in Northport, we have 2 sites. We have our office at Biscayne Plaza, and then we also are going to be at Shannon Staub Library, which is co-located with SCTI there in Northport. So 8 sites. You can choose any of those sites in the county to go vote during early voting. And then the traditional way to vote is on Election Day. Polling locations will be open throughout the county from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Election Day. You do have to vote at your assigned polling location. So when you register to vote, you either received or will receive a voter information card that tells you where your polling location is at. However, in this election cycle, we've had a number of polling location changes, and that will continue for November. Either because we've had some locations that may not be able to host us anymore in person because of COVID and restrictions at their locations, or because we have had a number of poll workers that typically work with us that have been unable to help us during this election cycle because of COVID. And we've had to maximize our staffing levels to deal with those changes. But you either have been notified or will be notified about where your polling location is for Election Day. So 3 ways to vote. Going back to vote by mail, if someone wants to vote by mail, they have to make that request by the latest date and time for the general election is October 24th at 5 p.m. But what I would suggest to anyone considering voting by mail is make the request early and return that ballot to us early. We're still, as I'm sitting here on my phone, I'm seeing vote by mail requests come through my email right now. People asking for ballots, and they will continue to do that. But the earlier is better for us to be able to get that ballot out in a timely manner to someone who wants to vote by mail, and to get it back to us in time, because vote by mail ballots have to be received by the Supervisor of Elections by 7 p.m. on election evening in order to count. Postmarks do not work for vote by mail ballot. So one ballot that's postmarked by Election Day that we get it after, that ballot's not going to count for domestic vote by mail ballots. So that ballot has to be in the hands of the Supervisor of Elections by 7 p.m. on election night. So the 2 things we're asking people to do who are considering voting by mail are to make a request early and return that ballot early. And then, as I said, you have your other options to vote in person during early voting and on Election Day. So we provide a number of opportunities for voters and a voter just has to decide what option is comfortable for them, what method of voting makes the most sense for them, and where their comfort level is at. And we just want to make sure everyone votes during this presidential general election that's eligible to vote. I will tell you that 4 years ago, in 2016, Sarasota County saw a 77% voter turnout in this election. For the general election, I think we could see that, if not higher, up to 80% in this election. It's a busy time. It's an exciting time. And there are plenty of opportunities for individuals to be able to register and to be able to vote in this election. So with that, I think I will wrap up my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you have.
Let's see.
Supervisor Turner, could you talk a little bit about identification needed to either vote by mail or vote in person?
When you're registering to vote, you're either going to provide the last 4 digits of your Social Security number or your Florida driver license number. Those things are required to register to vote in Florida. When you're voting by mail, what you need to know is we can only mail the ballot to the address that you give us when you register to vote. If you want it to go to another address, that has to be given to us in writing. And what we do with vote by mail ballots is check the signature on the ballot envelope. There's a certificate on the vote by mail envelope that has to be executed, and the voter swearing that this is their ballot and they're, that they voted it. We check each and every one of those signatures to make a comparison to the signature in the voter record to authenticate the voter and the ballot. In person, voters need to show a photo signature identification. There are 12 different forms of photo signature ID in Florida. The primary forms, of course, are Florida driver license or Florida identification card, but also student IDs are acceptable. The thing is if you have to have photo and signature. So if it's not combined, like on a driver license, then you can use two forms of identification to get that photograph and that signature if necessary. But you would have to show that during early voting or on election day if you vote in person.
Thank you.
There is a question about especially students that live on campus as to what address should they use, especially when requesting a vote by mail ballot. So can you go into details about that?
Yes, you need to provide your residence address for where you are living or laying your head at night. But then if there's a mailing address that is different on campus for you for your ballot, we need to know that too. So you need to work through your school, your specific school for that, whether you're at New College or Ringling, they can help you through that. Jada can, or Rachel can, Levy Baker can help you through that in those schools. But like I said, we have a residential address and a mailing address. Sometimes those are the same, sometimes those are not the same.
Are there any questions from the audience for Ron Turner?
I'm going to put the Ringling College Residence Hall addresses in the chat box. So just remember, if you're a Ringling student and you live on campus, you probably use the 1130 Greensboro Lane for your mailing address. But that's, for most of you, not the address you will use to register to vote. So the residence halls I put in the chat, that is the one that needs to go on the registration form. And then there's usually a separate field for the mailing address. So as he mentioned, that's where you would put the 1130 Greensboro Lane.
Right, because we don't all get the same ballot in the county. It's based on your residence. So there are multiple state representatives, because there are other things on the ballot this year. Imagine that, besides the President of the United States. So there are a lot of other races that are on the ballot. Congressional races, we have 2 members of Congress in Sarasota County, 2 races, District 16 and 17. We have various state house members. There's 5 state house districts that either have portions of Sarasota County, et cetera. County commission districts or single member districts now. So your ballot is based on where you live and your residence is located. So that's why that is important, because we do not all get the same ballot in Sarasota County. We have different offices to vote on depending on where we live.
And some students might even have different voting precincts if they live across the street from each other.
Yeah, exactly. You may have, if you wait till election day, which is final opportunity to vote, your polling location, the location where you go vote, may be different. Again, some of that is decided based on kind of ballots or geographic boundaries for some of these elected offices in the county. Because we have a variety of different things in the ballot. I will tell you the ballot this time is lengthy. Our ballot pages are 8.5 by 17 inches long. So it's like the length of a tabloid size piece of paper. It's 8.5 inches wide, front and back, 2 pages. So in some parts of the county, this front and back of both of those pages in length. So it is not a short ballot. There is a lot on the ballot in November besides the presidential election. There are questions on the ballot. There's 6 statewide amendments. There's a countywide question, and there's separate questions in if you live in the city of Sarasota or the city of Northport. There's also city commission candidates in the city of Sarasota, city of Northport, city of Venice. All of those things are contingent on where you live, again, in the county. So what else, folks?
So I received a question from a student. Their concerns are about tracking their vote by mail ballot. So can you tell us some information on how people can track their vote by mail ballot just in case something happens?
So you can track your vote by mail ballot through our website at SarasotaVotes, VOTES.com / vote by mail, VOTEBYMAIL. So it's SarasotaVotes, VOTES.com / vote by mail. Just all one word, VOTEBYMAIL. That is, you can go to that URL to either request a ballot for the a vote by mail ballot, or to track your ballot if you've already made a request. And it will tell you when your ballot is mailed. It will also tell you on that site when we receive your ballot back, and it will show you when your ballot is tabulated. Because in Florida, we begin processing, opening, and tabulating vote by mail ballots 3 weeks prior to election day. So that's another reason I was encouraging people to make requests early, return them early, because while some states, like Pennsylvania and others, may not start the tabulation of their vote by mail or absentee ballots until election day, our laws allow us to start that 3 weeks prior to the election, and we will, because we will need all of those days, hours, times that we can. So when the polls close at 7 o'clock on election night, that we can provide timely results. Most of the first results in Florida that you will hear after 7 o'clock at night are all the early voting results, in-person early voting, and the majority of the vote by mail results at that point. And so by returning to that, turning those ballots to us in advance and not waiting till the last minute or election day gives us an opportunity to check the signatures on all of those, open all of those envelopes, run those through scanners. All of that's a process. So it helps us, and it will help the public get timely election results by requesting early, returning early, and you're able to track your ballot then online.
Supervisor Turner, I know that you were saying that students can go ahead and register to vote, and we usually remind them to check on their voter registration status before that deadline to make sure that everything is as it should be. If they're going to register today or register next week, how many days should they wait to follow up on that, and what is the best way to check that their registration has gone through as planned?
Well, if they register on line at registertovoteflorida.gov, for instance, they should get a response from us with a voter information card, or a response from us if there's something incomplete within a couple of weeks, 3 weeks at the max. If they have gone online and registered, they can always contact us at the elections office at 861-8619. That's our voter services department, 861-8619. Or reach out to us and we can look into that for them. So if they're not sure by October 5th, I would have them reach out to us. I'd have students reach out to us to confirm that their status with voter registration. Because if we get past that deadline, that midnight deadline on October 5th, and they're not registered, there's no going back. There's nothing I can do about it legally to change that. So what else, folks?
You provide some advice to some people who may feel discouraged to vote, to kind of help motivate them to go out and vote and feeling like their vote doesn't count and matter?
Well, and and I think that that's very important, Jada. I think especially this year, things can feel a little discouraging with 2020 has been a tough year for all of us in a variety of different ways. And so I think when we get to 2021, we'll all be socially distanced, celebrating our ringing in 2021 and never talk about 2020 again, because it's been a tough year for all of us in a variety of different ways. But I'm amazed at how resilient we all are and able to adapt. Um, but as far as voting is concerned, each and every vote is important, and every vote counts. And you've heard that, I'm sure, that saying, every vote counts, every vote counts. Well, I'll tell you, in the August primary that we just had on August 18th, we had a Northport City Commission race where we had to do a recount, and it was decided by one vote. One vote decided the winner and loser of a city commission race in Northport. No pressure from us, those of us counting the ballots there, to make sure we got everything exactly right, when you're talking about down to one vote and difference. So that certainly speaks volumes. The other thing is one of the reasons I mentioned federalism earlier, and that states run elections. It can be discouraging often to hear a lot of the chatter on social media and the national media and things about elections, and who's doing what and who's saying what, and finger pointing and this and that. And the reason I point out that your supervisor of elections is in charge is because I'm not working for some higher authority when I'm working with you to register you to vote or conducting the elections locally. I work for you, the voters here in Sarasota County. I'm elected by you. I answer to you. I don't answer to some federal official on these sorts of things. So don't be discouraged by all of that noise, because a lot of times that's just political and it's not reality of what's going on down at the grassroots level or the local level. And the other thing I will tell you is we talk about having equal rights and equality and things, and we certainly have that in many different ways. But one of the ways that we really have that is when you vote. When you vote, if you vote by mail, you vote early, you vote in person on election day, you're going to fill out a paper ballot with an oval, and you're going to fill in that oval. But I can tell you that my ballot in Florida, when I fill it out, or yours, or even the President of the United States who votes in Palm Beach County, when he goes and does it, we're all the same. It's going to be treated exactly the same and counted in the same way. So it doesn't matter if you're the wealthiest person, the most powerful person, where you live in Sarasota County, whether you live in Longboat Key or Newtown, we're all going to be treated the same way and have an equal say and an equal voice at the polls on election day. So I would encourage you to get out there and make your voice heard, because it is impactful, it is powerful, and even one vote can decide the difference between who wins and who loses a race. And some people might say, well, what's the big deal about Northport City Commission? Well, we spend a lot of our time talking about the presidency. However, if you look at like a city commission race, for example, these are people that are deciding things about the local police force. So we talk a lot about that across the country, right? There's a lot of conversation right now about that. Roads, water coming out of the tap, or being able to flush a toilet, or things that you may take for granted, that are some of the most basic and most important functions in our lives. These are the people that are setting the policy or overseeing those that are administering those functions every day. So I can tell you, from a day in and day out perspective, that one vote, that Northport City Commission race, in many ways is more important than what we're hearing about on Twitter, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, frankly.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that and talking about the importance of also voting locally and the impact that it can have on us. As you said, just something as basic as that, and the impact of that. Thank you for sharing that. And I have one last thing. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but talking about the poll worker program and the importance on that and the impact of that and how people can apply to be a poll worker for the election.
So during an election, like election day and for early voting and other kind of temporary positions, we hire typically during election cycle 1,000 people or more in the county to work with the Supervisor of Elections, myself and the staff here. We have done a big recruitment effort and with poll workers in the county. So we're still accepting applications. You can apply to be a poll worker in the county if you're registered to vote. But we are not actively going out recruiting right now any additional poll workers because we've been very blessed, to be honest, with the amount of people that have stepped forward to help us during this election cycle. Because I'll tell you, most poll workers are over the age of 65. The average poll worker age in Sarasota County is 69. So many of these individuals were in the high risk category for COVID. So we lost hundreds of our poll workers that typically work with us during an election cycle. So if you're interested, you can go to our website at sarasotavotes.com and apply. But I will tell you right now, we're not actively seeking new poll workers, but we are taking the applications that we do get just in case we have any needs or something changes going forward. But we've received hundreds of applications from individuals in the county that stepped forward to try to help us out during this election cycle. And it's a great opportunity being a poll worker because those are the individuals that check voters in on election day, issue them their ballots, make sure their ballots are placed into the tabulator and tabulated and dropped in the ballot box. Those are important positions, and it gives an individual the opportunity to really see how the election system, how democracy works, where the rubber meets the road. Really, that's where it happens, in the precincts and the polling locations, either on election day or early voting. So, it's wonderful the individuals that help and perform that civic duty and get that experience. And if you'd like to do it, certainly you can certainly apply through our website, not discouraging it. I am just saying we've gotten a huge response from the community. That said, we're still going to have to consolidate a number of polling locations on election day just because of the size of some facilities or rooms and social distancing. We try to keep, if we have any lines forming, we don't want them going out into a parking lot in the elements without shelter or things if we can help it. So those are all considerations as well. But if you'd like to apply to be a poll worker, certainly go to our website at sarasotavotes.com. There's a poll worker button and you can submit an application. But I'm very impressed with the help that we've received so far with our need to have poll workers.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear that turnout has helped for the upcoming election. I was a poll worker years ago, and one thing I really appreciate about the experience is that it gave me a window into the security of our local elections, and that was very reassuring as a voter. You did mention the Russians. I'm curious what you can share to instill confidence in our election security for voters this season.
Well, several things. One is, when I mentioned states and 6,000 to 7,000 local jurisdictions running elections, I think that's important because there's not one point of entry into a general election around the United States because we don't have a national system of elections. So that's important. Another is we use paper ballots. So whether you vote by mail, whether you vote early or election day, Rachel, as you know, we use paper ballots. And so we tabulate those paper ballots, but we always have those paper ballots, the originals, to refer back to, and we store those after an election like this one for 22 months after an election. We hang on to those and store those securely. The other thing we do is, we're tracking even vote by mail or in-person voting, who's getting a ballot, how many ballots are being issued, how many people are voting versus how many ballots are tabulated, those sorts of things. Ballots and voting equipment once elections go live. All of those types of things are stored in alarmed rooms with video, 24-hour-a-day video surveillance. Staff members are not allowed to be alone with any of those ballots or equipment. We have dual control, meaning there has to be two of them. If they go into one of those rooms that's alarmed or cameras, they have to fill out a log sheet to know why they're even going in there. On our tabulation equipment that you see at early voting or on election day, you may notice there are tamper-resistant seals on the equipment and things with serial numbers. We know what those seal numbers are when we issue the equipment to workers. We know what to expect back from them when we get that equipment back from them. So there's a variety of measures and steps that we go through. And finally, the voting system itself isn't online. I know, we have sometimes voters, especially younger voters, that say, why do we use paper ballots? It seems a little, not the most current technology to use in elections. Well, the reason is because of election security. And so the voting system itself tabulates paper ballots, but it is not connected to the internet, the public-facing internet itself. It's kept separate from that. So that way there isn't really a point of entry into that system as far as hacking is concerned.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask as we have Ron Turner here? All right, well, if you all have any other questions, I'm about to share my screen. We put our contact information on this slide here, not this one, but hold on, here. So this is the contact information as it relates to your institution. So for me, you can email me if you're at New College of Florida. We also have TurboVote, so ncf.turbovote.org. This is a system that streamlines voter registration. You can do vote by mail requests on here as well as get election alerts. And Rachel, would you like to discuss the voting process for Ringling?
Sure. Thank you, Jada. We have set up a new email address, vote@ringling.edu. So any voting related questions, election related questions, I will work with any student that's got any question about any county that they're from. And then we have a Google site that we put up for voter registration information. It's powered by vote.org. If you don't get that URL from the screen here, just email vote@ringling.edu and I will point you in the right direction. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. And Katie, the process at USF SM?
If you have any questions, you can always just reach out to me. The TurboVote website is for all USF students, and I am always happy to help students. I know we have students from Hillsborough County and Pinellas County and Sarasota County and Manatee County. I'm always happy to help with no matter which county you're in, and we can always find the information together.
Thank you. And then Tessa? Thank you. And then for Everglades, if you can put the information in the chat and also talk about the process for students to get voting resources and whatnot.
Kaiser as well too, please.
Yes, and Kaiser.
And it looks like we have one last question for Supervisor Turner. How are you going to celebrate Constitution Day?
Well, I'm doing it right now with all of you, so thank you all for participating today and being interested, and thanks for all of you for voting, which is very important. And in the elections office, we celebrate Constitution Day every day, pretty much, because what we do and what all of you do as voters and participate in our society and our electoral process is so foundational to our life and lives and what we do. So it's Constitution Day every day. But what am I doing? Working for you today, trying to make sure this we get everything done in time for this general election, because there's a lot of work to do. So, but
well, we thank you for all that hard work, and to you and to Rachel Denton for your constant support for our campuses and to help our students be ready to vote. So it's very, very much appreciated.
Yes.
Let us know if we can do anything else. So always feel free to reach out to us.
Yes, thank you all so much on providing this information, as we are, I think, what, 47 days from the election?
It's not long.
Yes, it's coming up really soon. So thank you all for sharing your knowledge. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us, and we'll be sure to follow up using our resources. So thank you all so much for being informed, and let's register to vote and then go out and vote.
Yeah, get out there and vote, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.